Today I want to start a series on meditation and prayer, and I realize I didn't announce this. It's one of those things that I just came across the material again and thought that would be a good subject because it is a very important one. The first book I wrote for Unity was A Practical Guide to Meditation and Prayer, and I consciously made that decision to write the book at that time as the first out of the chute full presentation. I actually wrote it as a handbook first, as a booklet, and they encouraged me to expand on it into the book that it is today. But the reason I made the choice to do that is because it is these two practices are the most important, I think, of all the things that we talk about. And I put meditation first intentionally above prayer because it's an aspect of the prayer process that probably most people overlook. And I'll explain why it's important as we go here today in this overview. But just to kind of give you a simple illustration, yesterday Beth and I finished laying a new floor in our house, and we did this on our own. I didn't hire someone to do it. As you know, I, like Jesus, used to be a carpenter and know how to do some of this stuff, so I wanted to do it myself, and we finished it up yesterday. But you can apply this to anything. So your house is sitting there in one particular condition, and you get this inspiration to make something else happen, to put something else in. So that's an idea. It's an inspiration. And you can actually, as I did for probably a few weeks or maybe months, think about that idea and kind of let it solidify and start looking at different options on how to do that. But it's a process that is in the mind. It is something you can think about, something you can visualize, something you then have a basis to go out and look at different materials, different ideas, and so on, as to how you want to carry it out. So you could look at that as an infilling, an inspiration, but it is in and of itself irrelevant in the material world. So to bring it into a material reality, and we'll say that the vision that we hold first, that's the spiritual reality. It's a real thing. But you don't bring that real thing into the manifest world just by thinking about it. I think that's the hope with a lot of folks on the idea of the manifestation process. It's some kind of a magical thing. You just visualize something and it pops into being. And maybe that does happen sometimes. I'm not saying it doesn't. It does. But the idea is the infilling. It becomes the basis from which you operate, the standard. Then the next phase is you start making decisions. In order for the new to come, something old has to go. So you release something. In this case, it was carpet, and it was old trim, it was old doors, old everything that was there. There's a releasing, a letting go of that. And then there is an affirmative side, an actual putting down of the new. So you've got a single process here. You have something you want to accomplish. You get the inspiration, and then you go about the work of tearing out the old, letting go of the old, and replacing it with the new. And that's exactly what meditation and prayer is. Meditation is a receiving inspiration, seeing the higher picture, having the higher experience, the spiritual truth that I am whole, I am prosperous. I am being guided now. It's the actual knowing of that. Prayer, then, is the process of tearing out everything that's unlike that. I find myself thinking, well, I'm not doing so well, or my body is aching, my body is crying out if I'm praying for healing or whatever. I release that type of rhetoric. I release that type of energy that says this inspiration is wrong. And I affirm through my words, through my actions, through my thinking, what I experienced in meditation. I begin to let my dialogue begin to represent I'm laying down a new floor. It's mental emotional action that is in harmony with the inspiration that I receive in times of meditation, my time of quiet. So you can see this is a whole process, just like imagining a change in a house and then going through the motions of making that change, of tearing out the old and putting in the new. You start with the idea and then you move into the level of action. Meditation is all about ideas. It's about inner inspiration. It's about getting a vision. And prayer is the practical side to bringing that vision into fruition. And you can apply this. You have all done this. You've done this millions of times through your life, thousands maybe. Every time you get an inspiration, an idea to do something, you go through the same exact process we're talking about in meditation and prayer. But who thinks of it that way? Nobody. We don't think of it that way. But I have said many times, in this whole spiritual thing, it's not about learning new things. It's about being conscious of what we're doing, how we're using our faculties. And so that's how we're going to approach this. That's how I approached it in my book so many years ago on meditation and prayer. Meditation is often thought of as the art of listening to God, while prayer is thought of as the act of talking to God, usually in the form of a request. We often treat these as separate things. I hear people say all the time, I can't meditate, I can't slow my mind down. But I bet you can if you think of it in the way I just presented it. You do it all the time. Is your mind running so fast you can't come up with ideas? If you've got a problem in your life, is your mind running so fast you can't think of a solution? You can't be inspired by a higher vision? It's that we don't know how to apply what we do on a daily practical level to a spiritual thing. We make it something else. We turn it into something foreign. But meditation is not about just coming up with ideas. It's about stilling the mind to the point where the natural rising of our spirit, we can actually sense that. We can detect it for what it is. And yes, it does take practice to tune into that. But it's exactly the same principle. If you're praying for healing, for example, the point of meditation is to get an experience of your wholeness. To lay aside all this stuff you're telling yourself and say, despite how my body looks and feels, my soul, my spiritual self, am whole. Despite what it feels like I have lost, I am still complete. And so we expose ourselves to this level. We're not trying to figure anything out. We're simply letting go, allowing ourselves to be so still that our natural being arises into our awareness. And there is no end to the level of that experience. But if we feel uncomfortable with this kind of practice, it's enough to sit still and just say, I am whole now. I am being guided now. And get some sense of truth about that statement. And hold that idea. And that's a fairly surface level of what we're talking about in meditation, because meditation, as you drill down into it, to the experience, it will open your mind to the point where you won't find words to describe what you're experiencing profoundly. So don't think that's all it is. We're talking about dipping our toe in the water here. But start there. You want a picture of the wholeness that you're seeking. You want to actually sense that that is within your reach. That's where you start. That's where so many people do not, they leave that step out. I've got this issue that I need resolving, so I pray to God to hopefully God will give me the answer. I'm not opening my intuitive portal, my intuitive faculty to an actual experience of that truth. So I'm entering prayer without experience, hoping something will happen, hoping something will take place in my life that I have not yet experienced. I want to experience it first. That's meditation, and that's why it is, to me, the first step. Get your experience of wholeness first. Then you've got something. You've got something to pray about. You have a standard that you can say no or yes that's in harmony with that standard. If you get a flash of yourself as whole, then you know what to say no to. When those thoughts come into your mind, you know to say, no, that's not what I see. That's not true. I let that go. That's denial. It's a releasing. What is true is I am whole, and I say that, and I affirm that. I put it in words. But more importantly, I act as if the thing that I have seen is true. I act as if I have received already, because I have. It is true that I have. But we don't know that unless we actually stand at the door and knock until it opens up. And then we have a standard. It's a real standard. If you are a traditional Christian, the standard that you go by usually is, have I been living a good life? Will God answer my prayer? It's a bartering kind of thing. It's a conditional kind of thing. If you put the practice of meditation first and you experience your wholeness, you've already received what you're asking for, so there's no bargaining. There's no need to bargain. The next question is, am I in harmony with what I have received? Are my thoughts and my emotions in harmony with this higher truth? That's the question. It's not a matter of bargaining with God, because as I've said many times, God has already given us everything God is going to give us. And we find that difficult to believe. We don't understand it because we're looking up to the sky. We're looking away from where the source of our good is. And that's right here, in our center. Not physically, but within our reach, within our consciousness. I treat these practices as two halves of a single process. Meditation provides an infilling of inspiration, and prayer is the act of directing this inspiration into specific areas of our experience. So again, think of any mundane job that you have, something you need to get done. You get this vision of what you want done, how you want it done. That's the meditative side. That's the vision. Prayer is the action of making that happen. Maybe you want to put a couple of potted plants in your windowsill. The first thing you do is you see that. You see those plants sitting there before you even go out and buy some. That's the vision. That's the standard. That's the experience. You've had an experience that you can manifest. That's the infilling. It's totally invisible to the rest of the world. You can tell somebody, I'm thinking about putting a couple of plants in my window. And maybe they'll get it too, but it's not something that you can actually show. They'll get a totally different picture maybe than you have. So you have this picture, and then you go to the store and you see exactly the thing or something better that you would like to put in your window. That's the prayer process. It's an action. I hope all prayer processes aren't quite as difficult as laying a floor, because that is a long, drawn-out process. But that's prayer. That's prayer in action. If we're above that, then we might as well hang it up, because there's going to be times when we are called upon to give it all we have. And you can whine and complain about it the whole time, as I usually do. I'm getting too old for this, I would say to myself. But when you pound in that last plank and you stand there and look at the whole thing, it's pretty rewarding. So my prayer was answered. My meditation has become a reality. The invisible has become the visible. It's not magic. Some of you would go out and hire somebody to do it, and that's fine. It's the same thing. But that's how it works. You get a vision, and then you work it out. And prayer is the working it out. That's Paul's saying, pray without ceasing. Work it out. You're always getting rid of something that doesn't fit that vision, and you're bringing something in that does. That's prayer. Yea, yea, or nay, nay. That's what Jesus said. Anything beyond that is sin. Or something evil. Comes of the evil one. That mind that says, I don't know if this could happen. It's a very simple idea, and it's one you've been practicing all your life. From day one. From the conscious day one of your conscious awareness. It's a very simple thing, and we step into the religious business, and we get all confused. We're given all these professional opinions about, will God answer prayer, will God not? Or does God answer prayer? Meditation, what is that? I had one professor years ago, listening to a radio broadcast I used to do, was talking about meditation. Sent a letter and said, or a student of his sent a letter to me and said that meditation will destroy your mind. And I wrote back and said, he's absolutely right. It destroys your ignorance. It destroys that level of your mind that you don't need. So bring it on. It's a way of opening yourself to a level that is beyond your normal thinking. And I'm not talking about floors, and I'm not talking about flowers and windows. I'm talking about having an experience of what you are at the deepest level. That's the whole point of the meditative process. But I'm just giving you an analogy as to how it works and how it works with prayer. It's a practice you've been employing all of your life. So meditation provides an infilling of inspiration, and prayer is the act of directing this inspiration into specific areas of our experience. So we'll take a healing example, and you can apply this to anything. I've been working on healing myself, unexpected level of healing over the last, actually, several years. And what I would say is, if something doesn't come around as quickly as you want, don't worry about that. The story of Myrtle Fillmore is one of the most inspirational when it comes to healing. She was diagnosed with tuberculosis, not expected to live all that long. And she heard a speaker, Dr. E.B. Weeks from Chicago, in a lecture say that you are a child of God, therefore you cannot inherit sickness. She was told all of her life that she was weak and frail because she inherited this weakness. It was something she could do nothing about. And so she heard that all of her life, and she bought into it. That was her inspiration. That was her meditation for years. And then this guy comes along and says, that's not true. The soul doesn't inherit what the body is subject to. The soul is on a different level. It's not subject to the laws of physics, of material physics. It's a whole different thing. You, as a soul, cannot inherit sickness because you're whole already. And so what she would do, and this is why you don't need to worry about, is my prayer too orthodox? Am I falling back on my old perceptions and all that? She would go into a room with an empty chair next to her and imagine Jesus sitting there and communicating with him and guiding her through this healing process. And she did this for over a period of 2 years. And at the end of that time, she was complete. Her soul radiated out through her body, and she expressed wholeness. But the inspiration doesn't always come quickly. It would, but we have to overcome things. In her case, I've inherited this illness, so that's a pretty big deal. You've been told this by all the authorities in your life. And I'm sure that all of her life people hovered around her, protected her, and kept her out of this and that. I used to have, and still do have, a major issue with too much sun. I've had some horrendous heat strokes in my life. It used to be a big part of my youth. And I had to be very careful. And I never was. And I'd have these horrible episodes that probably were near-death experiences. I didn't know how serious that was until later on. But I've learned how to manage that, learned how to work with that. Just part of my body makeup. But it's a thing that, so all my early life, you know, my mother would always say, you know, do you have a hat on? Do you make sure you're not out too long? And just, there's always this chatter going around that I would have to, but I would have been so bad in having one of these that I dropped in the yard and could not make it to the house. For I don't know how long I laid out there, but it was just a few yards left to my salvation. We used to go hunting down railroad tracks in the middle of summer. It'd be 105 degrees for some odd reason. You know, as a kid, you just don't reason things out. But that was always something I carried around, and I still have it, and I have not learned to totally let go of it. But I know how to work with it. I know what to not do in order to have that, to avoid that kind of experience. But the point is, you can have something like this, and it'll be reinforced all of your life. So you may have something that you're dealing with that you've been told all your life is true. So what is the inspiration is we're seeking to come back into ourselves to that soul level, that I am a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness or perpetuate sickness or whatever scenario we're telling ourselves. Touch that part in yourself that is above that. And I still think we have to take the body into consideration, and it's just part of the deal. It's part of our taking on this body. It's a maintenance issue. So if your body has certain frailties in some areas, don't abuse that. Acknowledge that. It's not a weakness. It's acknowledging, you know, it's no more weakness than when your car's running on empty. You'd say, well, God's my unlimited supply. I'm not going to stop at any gas station. I tried that as a kid too. In the middle of winter, it was like 30 below zero wind chill. And I thought I was going to die, freeze to death, just going to a gas station and getting gas, walking. So I haven't done that since. It only takes once. But the point there is that, yes, you do have to acknowledge your body. We're not just pretending like, because I touch my soul in meditation, I'm going to put my body at risk with some dumb decisions. So regardless of the condition of your body, you are whole and complete right now. You invite this wholeness to come forth, to become part of your conscious reality. And that's what Myrtle Fillmore did, and it took her about 2 years to do that. Keep that in mind, 2 years. probably of every day going into a room, reading scripture, reading inspirational literature, imagining Jesus sitting there instructing, committing for a period of 2 years, and she didn't put the timeline on it. But that's commitment. I've got this problem, so I want to know how to overcome it. I want to touch that part of myself that didn't inherit sickness. Something in me believe that's true. Instead of just letting that float around in my philosophical mind, I want to actually experience that. That's the point of meditation, is going in for the experience. It's not an intellectual thing, it's intuitive. It's an intuitive opening. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Our wholeness stands at the door and knocks, and meditation is our opening of that door. It's a commitment. And if it doesn't happen right away, stay with it. Work with it until something does happen. And you will get that vision. You'll get the inspiration that you're after. You'll get that perfect picture. I'm not sure how many floors we thought about or looked at before we settled on a particular one. But that's part of the process. And when you're going into stillness, into meditation, it's not like there's this whole series of things to pick from, but there's the experience of knowing. When you touch that level in yourself, that deeper level in yourself, you know it. How do you know? You just know. There's no doubt. In prayer, you release all negative energy around this appearance and then direct affirmative statements to your body, particularly to the affected area. So prayer is a twofold process of letting go, denial, and taking on or affirming. Denial and affirmation, a letting go and a taking on. The denial is letting go of everything that is unlike what you experienced in your high moment. It's being aware of what's going through your mind, how you're feeling, and saying no to that. I let this go. And the affirmative side is saying yes to that inspiration that you received. Bring your mind into alignment with that, and that's exactly what the word prayer means. To make an alignment. It's the idea of alignment. You're aligning with what is true. Think of meditation as, another way to think of it is inhaling, and prayer is the exhaling of divine energy, two parts of a single activity we call breathing. You take a breath in and you breathe out. The out breath is prayer working in the material aspect of your life, the perceptions that you have, all of the things that go on in the external of your life. Meditation, you go away from the world. You step out of it. You go apart and you open yourself in silence to that level of your being that is pure life, pure love, pure power, pure intelligence. And then you breathe that out into your daily life through denial and affirmation. You're already whole. And if it's guidance you want, you are being guided. If it's prosperity you need of some form, you are already prospered. You're already complete. So you're already whole. You're fully immersed in the presence of God. You're not asking God to make you whole. That's very important. God, please make me whole, because I'm not. If you're saying that, you're focused on the body. That's not where meditation focuses first. You're going beyond that to the soul. What is true of the soul? What is true of you at the very deepest level? You're acknowledging God as your source, that God as your source is your wholeness. So it's not just you. You're connected to this cosmic bedrock of spirit that is absolutely whole. You're aligning yourself with the presence and action of God in and as you. So over the next several weeks, we'll get more into detail on this, but this is, I think, a pretty good overview, a good way to think about meditation and prayer and how you're already applying these principles in your daily life. Just make the shift over to your spiritual life. Okay, thanks again for coming out, and have a wonderful, another beautiful one of these